Hey everybody, it is the end of the month, and you know what that means, folks? It's time for another roundup where I'm going to be telling you about all the games Jen and I played over the preceding weeks. I will start with my least favorite, end with my most favorite, and the top three games of this episode, folks, the top three games of this month are actually three game of the year. So it's a very, very good month. I got 20 games to tell you about, but before I get going, you may be wondering, hey, shouldn't you be on the road in your RV, in your little dinette, trying to record with your little laptop that is so problematic? Well, yes, that has been the plan, and that was going to be the plan. We weren't going to be coming back home until like summertime next year, 2025. But plans change. We had to about face get back home because we're about to make an impromptu trip to Ireland, which is very, very exciting, and we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, that means I'm back home. It means I'm filming with all my normal stuff. It means the next two run-throughs I'm doing will be on this table, which makes my life a lot easier, I gotta say, rather than trying to film it in the RV. And yeah, all very, very exciting. Oh, also, it's freaking freezing in here. I've just come from Baja, California, where it was beautiful and sunny and warm, back to the cold, frigid, foggy Pacific Northwest, and our house, which has been vacant for 2 months, oh, it's got cold seeped into its bones. So I'm going to try not to shiver too much, although I am having to wear some ear protection because, man, I'm cold. But that's okay, folks. I'm sure I will start warming up as soon as I start telling you about these games. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Like I said, countdown style, starting with my least favorite, ending with a new game of the month, one of the games of the year. And what is number 20 on the list, you ask? Well, it is Sausage Sizzle, which I have not done a run-through of, but my good buddy Ruel Gaviola, he has done one on his channel, so you can see him playing it right here. There'll be a link down in the show notes for his video if you want to actually watch him play through. Did a very, very good job showing off this fast-playing little Yahtzee-style push-your-luck dice rolling game. This is a very, very simple game, and I have to admit, I was interested in playing it because it's from Inca and Marcus Brand, you know, one of the all-time great design duos, and I don't think I've ever seen them design anything quite this simple and lightweight. I mean, you know, they won their Spiel des Jahres for Village back in the day, and, you know, Rajas the Ganges is what they're known for. But here they are, just making a fast little Yahtzee-style dice chucker. What is it? Oh, we're having a barbecue in the Australian outback, but there are critters coming trying to steal food, and basically what you do is you roll dice, you set at least one aside, well, you can set as many as you want, and then re-roll, re-roll, re-roll till you're done. And then you score. Each player is going to score 6 different animals, you know, echidnas and kangaroos and all of that. And the way you score is how many of that particular animal you rolled multiplied by your lowest number die. And that's where the push your luck comes in, because once you roll, if you've got, like for your number dies, a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 5, do you just lock in that 3, or do you keep re-rolling trying to have your lowest number be something better? I mean, obviously you lock in those 5s because that's pretty good, but do you lock in that 3, or do you keep re-rolling it hoping that it becomes a 5 as well, you know, or a 6, so that you have a better multiplier? Clever little game. Where it really gets interesting is the number dice also have little sausages on them, and if you can get them all coming up sausage, you can get a 7x multiplier, which, I mean, if you can pull a couple of those off, you win the game. But it is a big risk to go for those, and sometimes you just want to play it safe. But hey, if you're falling behind, then you really gotta, you know, go all in and see if you can make that sausage sizzle. It's a sharp enough little game. Probably the most interesting thing about it is once at the end of a round you have scored for the Kawaka or the Echidna or whatever, you can't score that one again. So if you roll the platypus dice on a future round after you've already scored it, those dice are dead to you. So you're pushing your luck both with the animal dice and the number dice, but in different ways. So it's very, very simple, only slightly more complex than Yahtzee, quite frankly. And I guess it's a good next step for, you know, trying to introduce people who know Yahtzee to something bigger and better and a bit more fun. For me and Jen, it is way, way too lightweight. I don't think it's something I particularly need to go back to, but I understand, you know, its appeal. Not for us, but still, it's a good example of the form. It is number 20 of the month, Sausage Sizzle. Alrighty, now let's go on to number 19 of the month, Nova Era. Which is odd. According to Board Game Geek, this game isn't even supposed to come out until 2025, but I've got an early copy of it, and Jen and I played it in the month of December, and do not be fooled by the, it coming in at number 19, my second least favorite game of the month. This is an excellent Civilization-style game, where we're playing over multiple eras, building up technologies and whatnot to lead our society to cultural greatness and all of that. It's a sharp little game. Actually, I don't think there are any videos of it anywhere, right? It looks like there are some unboxing videos, but that's about it. Is this an unboxing video too? Apparently somebody filmed something at a convention in Thailand. Let's just go for images. Let's just look at some images. These will show the game off well enough. Oh, there we go. Here's the game show set up with its components. Alrighty. So, the crux of the game is there is a big grid of different technology and society and famous people cards that gets laid out at the beginning of a round. And when it comes to your turn, you're going to grab one card from the bottom of the column. So as this card gets taken now, this one's available to the next player. And over time, if you really want to get to those deep ones, well, you've got to hope you can get to them if other people get the lower value cards out of the way. But before we start grabbing cards at the beginning of every round, there are these little dice trays equal to number of players plus 1. And what happens is you pull dice out of the bag, you roll those dice, and you put them on the trays, and then we're going to go around the table drafting. Each player is going to get 3 dice. And I imagine there will be a picture of the game in action somewhere over here. Yeah, here's a close-up of the players' board. Here they are using their dice to grab different types of cards, whether they're technologies or people or, whatever... different types of things. There's basically financial stuff, there's military stuff, there's social stuff, there's knowledge stuff, and they all come in colors that match the colors of the dice. If you want to get a certain type of card, you want to get that color die when you're drafting, the little sets of 3 dice. Eventually, you pick one of your plates. This person grabbed a blue, which is going to relate to, the society stuff, and a yellow, which is going to rely on economic stuff, and a black one, which has to do with people, recruiting famous personages throughout history. So they grabbed that tray of dice because they wanted to get those types, or maybe they only wanted the famous person die, and they didn't care about the other 2. Here's the interesting thing about these dice. They're multi-use. While getting what do you call it? A golden die is going to be much better for drafting an economic card. You can use any die to draft anything you want. It's just that if you use a golden 5 to draft a golden card, you get a 5 gold discount. Whereas you don't get the discount if you use that die to draft something else. But sometimes you'll have to do that because you're desperate to get that military card. You couldn't get any red dice, but you find a way to make it work anyway. Maybe you have leftover unspent military from tokens from a previous round or what have you. So anyway, the 2 halves of a round are interesting. First, you got to figure out what dice you're going to grab. Then it goes around the table, players one after another using those dice to draft cards from the big display. And let's go back to that picture now. And there's something else very, very important. I said there were trays equal to number of players plus 1, right? The tray that is not taken, the 3 dice that are on that one, will push forward on 3 different, or maybe 3 of the same, depending on the color of the dice, calamities. Floods and pestilence and civil unrest and all of that. And everybody can see that we're moving farther and farther towards those. And if you're the last player to draft, you're going to decide, hey, which dice tray do I not take? That means that, that's going to be getting 3 more things closer to disaster. And maybe I don't care because maybe I've built a building that protects me from the particular disaster. And that might come into my drafting that, I'm not worried about floods, but I know everybody else is, so I should leave that one out because it means the floods will be coming very quickly, or whatever it might be. So the die drafting is cool. It's interesting. It's it's very fraught with peril. You really have to make smart decisions. But then once you've got your dice, again, players are going to, in turn order, use them to snag cards. Or, I mean, if there's no card you can grab, you can just turn the die in to get a bunch of the resources it generates that you can use on a future round too. So you have a lot of flexibility. These are basically multi-use dice, and I really appreciate that. There's one other cool thing I really like about this game. The way the March of Time works. Somebody in the early game might develop certain technologies that give them a leg up. But as we move forward in time and leave prehistory and go into, classical era and then Renaissance era and all of that kind of stuff, there will be new cards that come out. And if players draft the new cards, those cards will clearly say, hey, you know what? Now that this technology has been developed, anybody who had this older previous version of the technology, they've got to lose it. And it's a simple, clean, elegant way to represent the march of time and the development of new ideas and breakthroughs in humanity. But it is also can be it's not exactly aggressive. You grab a card because it's good for you, but often you'll be grabbing cards that indirectly hurt other players in a not insignificant way. And honestly, that kind of gives us a little bit of pause because my wife and I are Care Bear players. Also, some of these technologies can let you just outright steal stuff from other players. Again, very appropriate for a civilization building style game. You see this in a lot of type games. Not Jensen, my favorite cup of tea. You can guess why this is coming in so low. It has nothing to do with the gameplay. This is a very, very, very clever and thematically super strong civilization building game where first you draft the dice that let you drive everything else, then you draft the technologies. And I liked it a lot. I really liked the slow build up towards disasters. Reminded me of another game from Tasty Minstrel Games years ago, set in the Old West. But at the end of the day, this is not a keeper for me and Jen because there are so many ways that you can really either directly or indirectly mess with your opponents. And so that brought Nova Era down a little bit for us, and it comes in at number 19 of the month. But for folks who are looking for a strong, very fast playing and thematically grounded civilization game with some fun new twists, you might want to check it out. Okay, now let's go on to number 18 of the month, Scout. Now, this game came out several years ago, and I believe, or a couple of years ago, I forget, it wasn't like it didn't win the Spiel des Jahres, the biggest award in all board gaming, back in 2023, or maybe it was 2022. Never played it, wasn't really interested in it, but while we were visiting friends in Southern California, we did have a chance to try it out, and I figured I should give it a try because it was, so critically renowned and well loved, and I totally get it. This is a very sharp, what's the term? I want to say, is it like ladder climbing or card shedding? It's a card shedding game where at the beginning of a round, and I forget, you play through 3 or 4 rounds, something like that. Everybody gets, a whole bunch of cards in their hand, like 13 cards, something like that. I guess it depends on the player count. And when it comes around to your turn, you want to play a stronger hand than what is already out there on the board. You're trying to either get in your hand a collection of a kind, like 2 of a kind, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, or, a straight 2, 3, 4, or, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. But here's the thing. When you play those cards from your hand, they have to come from your hand in the correct spot. Once you have your handful of cards, you cannot rearrange the cards in your hand. So you might have the makings of a really strong hand that will score you big, potentially. But the problem is, those numbers are spread all over the place, and you can't just pick them up and move them around. So what happens is, like, we're looking at this. I mean, this person, they have a pair of 9s. They've got, actually, that's the best. It looks like the best thing they've got at the beginning of this draw. Or you can play a single. Their 9 beat somebody else's 8. And because they beat the current hand, they got to take the card that was already played by somebody else and score it at the end of a round. And now a pair of 3s beat their 9. And then it looks like, a straight, a 1, 2, 3, 4 beat that pair of 3s, and so on. And now we come back to our player, and they've got to beat the 1, 2, 3, 4, but they didn't have a way to do it. Here's where things get interesting. If it comes to your turn, and you don't have something to play to be able to beat the previous hand that was put out there, because values get bigger. I forget, I think of a kinds beat straights. There's some simple rules about that. If you can't beat the current hand on the table, you go scout. What it means is you take either the leftmost or the rightmost card from that was played out there by somebody else. And that means that player who you just scouted from, the player who had played that previous hand, they get little scout tokens, which are very, very handy, extra sources of points. But you take that card and you can put it in your hand wherever you want. And so you could then start using those cards to start making, like this player is probably going to be trying to build towards, 3 of a kind, 3 4s. That'll be very good for them. But in the meantime, they grabbed a 6 by scouting, and now they've got a pair of 6s they can use on a future turn. It's clever. The switch between, I've got a really amazing hand here, or I can build towards an amazing hand, depending on how well I scout for my opponents, knowing that every time I do it, I'm going to be giving them points. Here's the other trick, though. Eventually, somebody's going to empty out their hands, or if enough players pass in a row, the round is over, and you'll do interim scoring. The thing is, the player who emptied their hand, or the player who passed furthest in the past, who didn't pass recently, they don't lose any points. But anybody else at the end of a round who still has cards in their hands loses big points. In a given round, you might lose more points than you gain, and it can be a real roller coaster, up and down swing. It's sharp. I totally get why this game got so much praise, won awards left, right, and center. Very, very cool game. If I like this kind of game, it would be a total keeper. It's a great, group game for a restaurant. That's where Jen and I played it. It also, not very widely known. I am warming up. I think I can lose these earmuffs now. I'm really starting. It hasn't gotten warmer in here, but I'm heating up. Sorry, folks. Anyway. Not a lot of people know this. It has a 2-player mode as well, which, honestly, I think is very, very sharp. I mean, they have to make allowances. They kind of change the way scouting works a little bit, but it's a pretty good game for 2 players, too. And you don't often see games like this that work well for 2. So there's a lot to recommend here with number 18, Scout. It's just totally not for me and Jen because this is not our kind of game. I need to have something. I need to have some amount of theme to pull me into the festivities. Just, trying to build straights and, of a kind doesn't do it for me, but I totally see why it was so popular. Number 18 of the month. One of the best card-shedding games of recent years, Scout. All right. Now, let's go on to number 17 of the month, Arctic. Now, this is basically just a deck of cards and some tokens. It's a sharp little game all about trying to do wildlife sighting in the Arctic. There are walruses, there are penguins, there are orcas, there are polar bears, and we are trying to see as many of them as we can. The more we can see that we can basically stack onto our stack of cards in front of us by the end of the game, the more points we're going to get. But the trick is doing it, because the way it works is at the start of your turn, you are going to play a card from your hand. And that card has you do several different things. Oh, shoot. All right. Oh, yeah. First of all, it says how many cards you're going to play to your scoring pile right now. Whether you're going to play 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. It also tells you what special power you're going to be giving yourself. And you might, it lets you manipulate your scoring piles and do all kinds of things. It also, whatever card you play, tells you how many cards you're going to draw at the end of your turn from the public display. And it's also the cards that are actually, these are the cards we're trying to score, because you're trying to play these into a stack. The trick is, at the end of the game, you will score for your penguins or your moose or your foxes or whatever based on the biggest contiguous group of those animals you've got. So as you're playing them to your stack, you are trying to be smart about ensuring, okay, well, if, the last card I played was a walrus. I need to get more walruses played because I'm trying to get a big group of walruses together. So getting the special powers that will let you manipulate the cards as they're going into the stacks, or hold back cards until I've got a big group of them in my hand. I've got like 5 walruses in my hand. That's when I want to play a card that says, hey, play 5 cards to your score pile now, and boom, I can drop that big collection of walruses I've been saving up for quite a while. But that's not all. Each player has their own special secret animal that they are trying to watch for. And there is this little progress track. Another thing your card does when you play it is it says, hey, you know what? One of the animals has to become more popular and one has to become less popular. And so you're trying to play cards to push your secret animal up and make everybody else's secret animal fall back down too. But maybe I'm going to have to play a card that lets me play cards that, put me in a situation where I might even actually hurt my secret animal I'm trying to score. It's a clever game. There's a lot going on, and like I said, from the one card you're going to play on your turn, that has so many ramifications for the value of your secret animals, how many cards you get to play, what special powers you are going to give yourself, how many cards you're going to set yourself up for next round. It's clever, it's fast, it's lovely looking, has kind of like that polygon art style to it, and it was a lot of fun. Definitely enjoyed it. Still a little on the abstract side for me, but I don't think I would ever turn down a game of this. My wife and I, generally, we're looking for something bigger, longer, but this is a phenomenal restaurant game. Another game we actually played with friends at a restaurant in Southern California. If that's what you're looking for, and I mean, if you've been watching, you can see, I'm actually playing a video from Ludonaut, the publisher here, that pretty much walks you through almost all the rules in less than 5 minutes. I have to keep rewinding. The video is so short. But you should just be able to look at this and see if it seems appealing to you. The simple idea of play a card that then just triggers this cavalcade of consequences for your action as you're trying to save up, build the perfect stack of spotted animals, manipulating the stack, changing the rules for how you can grab cards, all kinds of cool things. There's a lot to recommend with number 17 of the month, Arctic. Okay. Now, let's go on to number 16 of the month, Lumicora, which I've not done a run-through for, but Steph Hodge, of all games, she and Michael have done a run-through for this. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. I've got to go back a little bit, folks. Let's reopen some old tabs, because I did not give credit where credit is due. My video scout, thank you, channel Fenirob, for this gorgeous-looking video. I should, links for Fenirob's, video is down in the show notes, so you can go watch them play. In case I whetted your appetite for this, I totally should have mentioned that before. My apologies to Fenirob. They did a great run through for it. Highly recommended. Now let's get back to where we were. Right, number 16. Lumicora, with the video from Steph and Michael. Links down in the show notes if you want to watch them struggle through it. And folks, this game is deceptively deep. It seems like a very simple tile drafting and tile laying game where we're trying to rebuild coral reefs. And I very much appreciate that. Unlike, I complained about this years ago with the game Reef, where they just turned reef development into an abstract game. I appreciate that here they recognize, no, this is what real climate scientists are doing out in the world right now. They are trying to repopulate coral reefs. I've seen a video about it on YouTube. It's amazing. And so I love the fact that, this is the role we're playing in this game, trying to ideally rebuild the reef, trying to get the right types of corals in the right spots, and also making habitats for the sea life as well. So the theme is very, very attractive. The gameplay is very, very sharp, and oh my gosh, what seems at first to be so simple gets so crunchy so fast. Here's the trick. You at the start of your turn, you've got 4 tiles in front of you. Like, let's see, which one? Steph over here, she's got a blue 2, a blue 3, a green 5, and a yellow 4. You've got to take one of those tiles and give it up. Throw it into the central supply, the atoll, the atoll it's called, where there are already some tiles out there, right? So you give up one of your tiles, which means maybe you'll be able to get it back on a future round, but chances are some other player might grab it before you could ever give it back. And you're throwing away potential ways to score points. But anyway, you give up one of your tiles, and then that allows you to take up to 3 tiles of a matching different color from the atoll. And then you start doing tile laying your tiles out, but also building them higher and higher. But that's not all. Actually, there's 3 things you can do. First, you give up a tile. right? Which means somebody else is probably going to snag it before it comes back around to you. Then you choose. Am I going to, like, right now, is it Michael is trying to decide, should I take those 2 pinks or should I take those 3 blues or whatever it might be? You can grab some new tiles to start building, or you can build one of your other tiles that you did not throw in. Because I desperately want to build that 5. Okay, I'll give up the 1 so I can build the 5 and not bother about taking stuff in the atoll. That's a possibility. The third thing you can do is you can give up a tile, and then that, whatever the value of the tile, the number on it, you grab that much limestone, and you need limestone. Because there's some of it already on the board, but to be able to expand the coral into the area where there is no limestone foundation, you've got to set that stuff up yourself. So these are multi-use tiles. At the start of your turn, when you give up a tile, you're either getting more limestone, getting common tiles from the public supply, if the right combination is there, or playing of one of your other existing tiles. So that's half of the game. But then the other half of the game is where the puzzle really hits the road. In fact, it's so puzzly that the game rules recommend that after you've taken your turn of getting the tiles you're going to build, tell everybody you're done and let them go on. Because then you might have a good 30, 40 seconds figuring out, how am I going to stack these tiles up? Because when you're putting your tiles, when you're expanding the coral reefs, if you're putting a blue tile down, first of all, if you have any existing blue tiles, you must expand from them, either outwards or upwards, building up. If you're trying to expand into areas where there's no limestone, you have to pay limestone. And the tricky thing is, at the end of your turn, you have the option, at the end of every turn, you have the option to score one of the 4 colors. And there's only 10 rounds, so you only have 10 rounds to score. If you score a color early in the game, you'll get limestone for free. But you probably haven't had much time to make that coral color very valuable. If you wait until late in the game to score the tile, then you won't get much in the way of free limestone. And so you have that tough choice to make about scoring at the end of every round. But then the other thing is the way you score. There's a bunch of animals, and there's a standard and an advanced version of the game. They're playing the standard version where the animals are set collection. The much crunchier way is to play the advanced version of the game, where each sea animal has a different way to score. Like seahorses want to be like in little caves, they're surrounded by high walls, and starfish are the opposite. They want to be on top of mountains of tiles and stuff like that, so you have to build towards their strengths. So that's how you score the sea animals. But the way you score the color tiles is because you're building upwards, like Michael here, he on his ground level, he's got a 2, and then on the next level up, he's got a 3 and a 4, and then on the next looks like another 4, and then on the highest level, on level 3, he's got a 3. If he wanted to score his pinks right now, he has to take the worst value from every level and score that. So since he's got a 2 on the ground floor, he's got to score that. On his next level, he's got a 3 and a 4 and a 4. He'd like to score those 4s, but he's got to score the 3. He can't score those 4s. And so, as you're building up, one of the things you want to do is use your new higher level tiles to cover up the crappy low level tiles that will drag your score down. Like he just did. He used that green 3 to cover up something down below, so that now if he scores his greens, he's got a 4 or 5 and a 3 at different levels. So that's going to score very nicely. So, knowing when to score. Score early, don't make as much, but get that limestone for free without having to waste turns. Wait until the end, because maybe you could score 4 or even 5 levels of tiles and have huge scores. I'm just telling you right now, folks, Lumicora looks simple. It looks like a family-friendly gateway-style game. I don't know that it is. I think this is a game that needs to be a next step. This is not, this is a game where you have to see that your friends and family have mastered something like Carcassonne before they're ready to go to Lumicora. It doesn't look like it, but it is crunchy as all get out. Very, very harsh, very restrictive with the limitations of how you have to build and how you have to expand. And very challenging. Liked it quite a bit. If anything, why did it come in at number 16? It's interesting. It was almost a little bit too crunchy for us. Don't get me wrong. My wife and I we were able to master it. We both did very well. Scoring high and all that. But man, this game puts you through a ringer. It really makes you sweat and really crunch hard. And we almost kind of felt like, boy, we'd almost kind of like a lighter version of this game. I'm not saying it like matches Vita Lasarda in terms of depth and complexity or something like that, but it's just a very, very challenging game. Really sharp and puzzly. So much so that we kind of felt like, yeah, we wouldn't mind it just being, a little bit smoother, a little bit less. But if you want a lovely looking game that is 3D tiling, expanding out but leveling up. And you don't mind the fact that it's largely an abstract game. To be fair, the way the animals score is very nice. I mean, the seahorses, they make perfect sense. So do the clams and the crabs and all that. So, I mean, I would say the theme is there. But, we liked it quite a bit. I would play it anytime, but I would gird my loins going in because, okay, this is going to really put the crunch hard on me. And it kind of feels like it shouldn't be that way. It feels like it should be a lighter, more friendly, frothy game, when in fact, it's surprisingly crunchy. It's really interesting. I definitely, if you get a chance, try it out, folks. Number 16 of the month is Lumicora. Okay, now let's move on to number 15 of the month, Snowcrest, which again I have not done a run through of, but Kavre did. They did a great run through of it. Bear in mind they're playing a prototype. The final version of the game looks a little bit different, but it plays the same. So if you want to see it in action, links down in the show notes for their excellent run through. They did a great job as always. Love these guys. And oh man, Ilya. Interestingly, they put up their top 10 for 2024 the other day, and I think Ilya maybe has more overlap with me than anybody else in all board game media. Sorry, that has nothing to do with Snowcrest. Let me just go back to Snowcrest. Snowcrest is a game from designer Phil Duberry, who's been MIA for years, but now, finally, in 2024, we're seeing Phil come out of retirement and make some new designs, and this is an excellent one. We are building a snowy village full of anthropomorphized animal, humanoid creatures, and on your turn, it's very, very simple. You are either going to play a card, this is I guess you call it a deck builder of sorts. You're going to play a card from your deck to one of the 9 spaces of your village. It's a 3x3 grid, or you are going to activate a previously played card by doing what it says and then flipping it over face down. That's it. Those are your turns. And your turns are very simple, fast little turns. Often your turns are, okay, I'm gonna grab some lumber, or I'm gonna grab some, I'm trying to remember what bells, some worship bells, or whatever it might be. You often do a lot of little baby step turns, but building up towards some big turn. Some card you activate that does some really big thing, like triggering an auction, or having you go on a spiritual quest, which means you'll have to pay penalties to receive a big reward and stuff like that. But anyway, the crux of the game is you've got your cards in hand, you're either playing them out there to set yourself up for the future, or you're activating cards that have already been played. And eventually you're going to get to the point where, oh, I don't really have anything good to activate, or I don't have any good cards to play. What am I going to do? Well, once you have gotten 3 of your cards that are already in play in your village in a straight line, either vertically, horizontally, or diagonally, once you've got that, your turn, instead of playing or activating a card, could be to rest. And what that means is that's when you get a big wave of income of resources based on the resources that are on your cards, either face down or face up, and you get to refresh all your cards. All your face down cards go back face up. And so a big part of this game is strategically deciding, okay, finally, you can see they're, now they're probably going to rest. Because they've got a vertical line over here. So they could get income from all their face down cards and their face up cards, and then reset and keep on going. And that creates a very interesting and fun and smooth dynamic as we're kind of consuming, doing all our stuff over and over and over again and trying to build up for that big payday. Okay, I don't want to rest yet. I need a couple more cards out so my payday will be really big, or whatever it might be. Although you only have 3x3 grid cards, you can override cards with new ones that are better that you can earn over the course of the game. But it's a fun little puzzle, and it's fast playing. So I like designer Phil Duberry. I like the presentation. I like the gameplay. I like the theme. It's a nice thematic little game. So why did it come in at number 15 of the month? some of the actions. I'm not saying this is an aggressive take that fueled game, but there are definitely ways that you can inadvertently mess with your opponent. I mentioned one of the things that your cards will let you do is, kind of go on spiritual quests, which basically means you reveal a card and you see the card. Oh, here's the big reward I get, but here's what I have to pay to get that reward. And the thing is, these cards hit everybody else around the table because for everybody who didn't go on the spirit quest, they get punished by the spirits. And so, it's not my fault that I'm constantly ruining your game, that I'm making you have to give things up or whatever it might be because I'm doing my own thing, but the game does put you in that situation as often as not. And that was just kind of something that Jen and I felt like, that's kind of a bummer. I was just about to do my big thing, but now I just lost all my bells. Or you waited till I didn't have any bells, and then you triggered the auction, so I can't participate and whatnot. So the game, this is definitely a game where you reach out and touch other players. There is real quote interactivity in quote between you and other players in this game. And while it is a sharp, fun, fast-playing puzzle, I really like it quite a bit. I like the objectives everybody's racing to be the first to complete. There's a lot to recommend here. At the end of the day, again, it's not that you're even directly... Oop, I went too far. Coming back. It's not that we're even directly smashing, butting heads with each other. It's just there's too much kind of incidental, accidental, damage done, which just kind of... dampened our enthusiasm. But for players who don't mind a little bit of bumping heads, there's a lot to recommend here, and it's great to see Phil Dewberry back with a very sharp, fast-playing little game, number 15 of the month, Snowcrest. Okay, thank you, Tyler and Eli did a fantastic job. Okay, let's move on to number 14 of the month, Kathmandu. And now this is a game I was very, very excited to play because it's from my favorite designer of all time, Herr Steffenfeld. And this is interesting. This is probably the lightest game he has done in years. This is a game where we are racing along a randomly generated track, and I haven't done a run-through for this, but I'm using Tom Heath's Slicker Drifts. Excellent run-through. Link down in the show notes if you want to go check Tom in action playing it. But as part of setup, you create this path through Nepal trying to reach Kathmandu. And along the way, there are ample opportunities to visit shrines, to draw paintings of the wildlife you see, to basically interact with the environment in lots of different ways, to collect items you need to do those interactions, and also just to meet the needs of your trusty yak that is seeing you through. The way it works is, everybody has a set of 6 colored dice. And at the beginning of a round, you're going to roll all 6. And then, over the next 3 turns, you're going to play 3 of those dice. If you play a purple 2, that means your yak, representing you on the board, is going to move exactly 2 steps in whatever direction you want. If you play the black 5, you're going to move 5 steps. And, but once you start moving, you have to go in a straight line. So this is really a roll and move game. I'm kind of reminded of Merlin. Where Steffenfeld also tried to make roll and move fun and meaningful and an interesting decision. He did it in Merlin, he did it here because you've got these 6 dice and you're trying to, okay, I need to get over to the forest. I need to get there because my yak, if I get there, I make my yak happy and there's potential for score more points the more you meet the needs of your yak. Or I want to hit that temple, but that temple is only, it's a tiny spot and I can't quite get there with the dice I've rolled. But if I use this die move over here, then I can use this power to manipulate this die to be able to move back and then get to the place I want to go. But will I get there in time, or will somebody else beat me there and grab the map piece that I was trying to get from that temple or whatever it might be? So that's kind of the overall decision making you're trying to do as we are racing along, trying to make sure we have enough food to feed our yak at certain times, trying to stay ahead of a storm that is constantly chasing us. If we fall behind the storm, we start accepting penalties. We also get penalties if we ever make a move that we fail at, that would run us into a mountain and we can't quite move the full 5 steps because we didn't take the long way around the mountain. We'll take penalties for that. Or we'll take penalties if we fall behind the storm, or various and sundry things. And so you've got to deal with those kinds of things. But the trick of this game is you're trying to figure out which dice to use, where to move. But I mentioned the number. The number of the die says You pick the direction you go. The number says how far you're going to go. The color says what free item are you going to get. If you play a brown die, that means you're going to get another backpack. And you need backpacks for when you visit cities that will... Wait, no. I forget. Oh, no, you need coins when you visit cities to buy artifacts. You need backpacks when you visit certain locations to collect tools that you can use for special powers. You need... I'm trying to remember what all the resources are, but the different places you can go, there's 6 different colors of dye, there's 6 different resources you can grab. So when you play a pink, purple, or a purple 2, maybe you don't want to go 2 steps. Maybe you need to go 3 or 4 steps, but you need to get that purple tool before you get where you're going. And that's the interesting thing, that every die you choose, and you're only going to move with 3 of the 6 dies you rolled, it's telling you where you can go, how you can get there, but also what you're going to pick up along the way. And that elevates this game to something that is very sharp and very entertaining. Jen liked it quite a bit. I was a little mixed on it. One, there is a module you can turn on that gives everybody special powers, and I gotta admit, I was not a fan of how those special powers worked. Far be it from me to question the design prowess of Stefan Feld, but I think he kind of blew them. And I think they become too overpowering. Sometimes special powers can become so special that they just pretty much mandate that this is what you must do. And if you do not leverage your power to the full extent, you're failing. And it kind of puts you on rails. They're an optional module. Honestly, I would play without them, quite frankly, because I feel like they kind of put the game on rails a little bit more than I would care for. Also, there's a lot of luck in this game. Of course it's dice, and there are ways you can mitigate the dice and all that, and it's still, ultimately, it's skill that will win you this game, not luck. But luck does play a huge part. That new animals could just pop up, or tools that you need that are just exactly perfect for what your opponent needs, and they just happen. It falls right into their laps. And I have to go long ways out of my way to get the stuff I want to do because of random draws. Again, I'm not saying luck will determine the game. There's still a lot of skill, and the game is long enough, especially if you play the Express. You can play where you play, I think, for 3 fewer rounds and 1 fewer, terrain. If you play the Express version, I guess I'd say maybe luck might play an oversized. If you play the full-length game, the luck is going to come around, go around. But there's other stuff, too. There are opportunities where you can kind of sort of steal stuff from each other. It's not exactly. If I end up, manipulating my dice just right so I can land in the exact spot you're on, one of the things we're collecting are maps that can be worth points at the end of the game. And somebody might really covet my green A map. And if they land right where I am, they can take that from me. Now, they've got to give me some other map, so it's a swap, right? It's friendly. It's a swap. We're trading maps. But I don't want your crappy map, and I don't want my map, and you stole the map I took, and now I've got to maneuver myself to land on you so I can steal it back. And honestly, that I don't know why that needed to be here, this little bit of player interaction. There's a couple of other ones as well, and it's interesting. There's another style of interaction that the game could actually let you remove, but honestly, I felt taking that out kind of didn't break the game, but it was obvious the design required that other element to be in there. So overall, I think it's a sharp game, and if you're looking for a fun, fast, simple to teach, fast playing, little bit luck, and a little bit head-butting race game, it's worth checking out. Me personally, I'd probably go play Merlin. If I want to play a roll and move game from Stefan Feld, I'll take the more Yuri version. And if I want to play a race game, I'll play Cubitos instead, where players can never mess with each other at all. We're just racing in good faith. I was surprised. Very rarely, I should say, have we seen this kind of stuff from Feld. And it's well done. And I'm sure a lot of people love that kind of stuff. But Jen and I don't. And so, Kathmandu was one of my most anticipated of the month, but it came in a bit lower than I had hoped for at number 14. All right. Now, let's move on to number 13, Nassau. This is another new design from Stefan Feld, although I say new design, not exactly. For the last couple of years, Stefan Feld has been working with Queen Games. Oh, you can see I filmed this on the road. Filming in the RV. Let me go ahead and, yeah, a little fuzzy. Apologies for that. I'm back home now. It's easier for me to film in nice high res, even though I was using the exact same equipment on the road, but filming in the RV is hard. Regardless, anyway. Stop talking about the quality of my filming. You can see it. What is it? This is a game, piracy adventure in the Spanish Main, in the Caribbean. What's happening is this is a remake of an old Feld game. One of his first published designs, Rum and Pirates, a game I covered many years ago, which was a clever enough game, a game of kind of the board game version of Snake. You know that video game where, as you move the snake around trying to grab whatever they are, the fruit, the snake gets longer and longer and leaves more and more of itself behind. This is kind of like a multiplayer version of Snake where half of the game is maneuvering a pirate captain around Nassau. Formerly it was Tortuga, now it's Nassau. Trying to move to collect the provisions you need to go on a sea voyage. But as you move, you leave your pirates behind. And so over the course of a round, you start to develop, you can see, in this run through I did, and there's a link for it down in the show notes, you can see this snake of people, which kind of creates a wall, a barrier that you then have to maneuver around depending on how many people there are. This is definitely a game that'll be more interesting with more players, because there'll be more opportunities for the snake to be longer and affect gameplay. But still, this snake idea was very cool in Roman Pirates. It continues to be very cool now. But here's the deal. All of the other city games where Stefan Feld has been revisiting some of his old classics, like Bruges became Hamburg, and Macau became Amsterdam, and La Isla became Vienna, and stuff like that. For all these other games, Feld has mostly been keeping 95% the exact same game. They've just gotten new art, a new theme, maybe some new modules, sometimes a solo mode, but really not significant changes. Not so for Nassau. Nassau is like a whole new game. Because the original game, all there was just moving around the city doing set collection stuff. And a bunch of silly little, almost party game-like roll and roll-off games where, we're going to be in a drunken brawl and everybody can jump in and we roll dice to see who does best in the brawl. Really simple, like borderline party game stuff. All of that is gone. Now, the first half of the game, the snake portion, walking around town. Oh, wait, hold on a second, folks. I hear my phone ringing. That must be my wife. Wait a sec. Okay, issue resolved. I do not remember what I was saying. I believe my point was that the original game was just the city stuff, and it was just simple party stuff. Now you do the same city game, but to collect resources that you will spend and use in the second half of the game, which didn't exist at all. There's an actual map of the Caribbean. And after you're done, after you've gotten everything you can out of the city, you used up all of your sailors to go as far as you can, you then transplant out to the map, and you're going to spend the next few turns sailing from port to port, either fighting sea monsters, krakens, or frigates or stuff like that, or taking control of areas, doing area control stuff, engaging in trade with ships that are on the move, all kinds of things. At no point do you ever do any kind of direct attacking against other players in this game, and I very much appreciate that. But you basically play this whole little pirate game, which could have been a game all on its own. This is literally two games bolted together. I know one of them used to exist as a standalone game, Roman Pirates, but now you could have bought this game because it is a fun, compelling game, with dice rolling and area control and interesting decisions to make that just goes really smooth. And once you're done, once you've used all your provisions and you have to pass doing this, well, here's an interesting thing. Before you go back to the city and play the city portion of the game again, you can make some stops. After you pass, you don't just immediately end for the round. You go through 3 levels of passing. Kind of like Maracaibo, now that I think of it. First, you can stop at a Skull Island and bury treasure, but only if you've got enough gold to bribe your crew so that they won't reveal what your treasure is. And that can be a huge source of points. Then, the second turn of your passing, you go to a storyteller island where everybody has a handful of little micro objectives you can do, and this is where you can go and actually look, I completed that objective either in town or when I was out sailing around. I did whatever it was I was supposed to do. I met the certain milestone and I'll score points. But you can only tell these stories if you've saved some rum, because you've got to kind of loosen up the crowd a little bit and get them interested in your stories. And then your third passing step is making it back to Nassau and getting income from what you have done out in the Spanish Main, getting more supplies and whatnot, and then you'll eventually be able to go back into Nassau and start the second round. So it's sharp. Both of these games would stand on their own, and I'm a huge fan of games that give you lots of little... Ever since Hallertau from Uwe Rosenberg, I've been in love with these, bigger games that don't just have, have 2 or 3 objectives you're trying to complete towards the end of the game, but just tons of little objectives you're doing throughout. And it gives you lots of interesting decisions. It's a fast, fun playing game. It's very thematic. There's no real player versus player stuff. There's a race to grab stuff. And there's one other thing I should mention that's really cool about it that I like a lot. And that is the notion of fighting. When you fight, different types of enemies require different investments in cannons or sabers or pistols or whatever it might be. And, depending on the amount of the type of weapon plus the amount of crew members you have to use those weapons, you can do that much damage against a creature. And maybe you're in a spot where, hey, you know what? I could beat this Kraken straight out. They have 3 hit points. I've got 3. I forget what Kraken need to fight them. I'm going to say it's hooks. It's not. But when I've got 3. I got everything I need. I could just beat this Kraken right now. But here's the thing. Every time I successfully attack the Kraken, I get a reward. And so I'm incentivized, even though I could all in one fell swoop very efficiently with only one action, with one turn, I could completely defeat the Kraken. That means I'd only get to fight it once and I'd only get the payday once. No, I want to play with my food. I want to string it out. And even though I could beat them all at once, I want to slowly whittle them down, because every time I attack them, I get more income, points, and rewards galore. And so this is a really interesting thing. I've never seen another game do this, where always games you're incentivized to be hyper efficient, save up, go for the big thing. Here you're incentivized to do little baby swipes at them like a cat playing with a poor hapless mouse before it finishes the job, so you can extract as much out of them as you can. But the longer you draw it out, the more somebody else might come along and finish what you start. Although you'll get a reward for the work you have done getting them to cross the finish line. So there's almost like a little bit of semi-cooperative element in there too, although this is a very competitive game, or a race game. It's nice. I liked it a lot. I have to admit, I'm definitely not a fan of the roll to resolve. Actually, you are guaranteed. It's very deterministic. You know exactly what you're going to do. But then, every time, the reason you don't want to attack over and over and over again, but instead finish the bad guy in one fell swoop, there's 2 reasons. One, every turn you take out at sea consumes, your provisions, one of the resources you've got. So the longer you take to beat them, the less you can do other things out at sea. So that's a trade-off. But the other one is, every time you attack them, they will attack back, even on the turn when you finish them. And if they're big, scary things, they'll keep attacking at full strength. And so every time you get attacked, you have to roll dice for defense. And the number of sails you have on your ship, it increases the amount of dice you get to roll. And you're really never in very much danger because, on any die, unless you roll a 1 or a 2, you will successfully avoid, the damage they do. Although sometimes you have to spend rum, because instead of them attacking you, they could try to dodge your attacks, and then you have to spend rum to steady the hands of your cannoneers so they don't miss, stuff like that. So it's a really interesting thing that you at once you want to drag it out, but you also want to finish it, and it's a Stefan Feld game. It's really nicely done. I really liked it a lot, honestly. Honestly, any other month, I might have kept this game, quite frankly. It's really good. Jen loved it too, quite a bit. But I kept coming back to, would I rather play this, or would I rather play Dead Reckoning from John D. Clare, which is admittedly a heavier and longer pirate simulation, but it provides co-op play with the Letter of Mask expansion. If I did not have Dead Reckoning with Letters of the Mask, this would be a keeper for me and Jen. But if this had a co-op mode, I would probably get rid of Dead Reckoning and keep this instead, because they're both just about as good as each other. Really highly recommend this game, and it's only because it kind of scratches the same itch as another game that I could play cooperatively with Jen that I sadly will be sending Nassau on to the Dice Tower West Convention Library. But man, I'm really on the fence about this, folks. Here's the only problem I have with it. Really, the only problem is the box is gigantic. It takes up a lot of shelf space, and I don't have much shelf space, and my Dead Reckoning takes up a lot of shelf space too, and I have a hard time reckoning with keeping both of them on the shelf. Honestly, in a lot of ways, I think I like this one more. No offense to John D. Clare. Dead Reckoning is awesome with all its card crafting and the cube tower for combat resolution. Honestly, I like the combat resolution much better in Dead Reckoning, whereas, I like the speed and the efficiency and the puzzliness of this. Granted, this game is going to work better at higher player counts, especially the town portion, just like Rum and Pirates before, but folks, this is a blast. As I say right there in the title of this is the most thematic game Feld has ever made. It really feels kind of like Feld making an adventure game. And he did a brilliant job, and I think a lot of people are going to fall hard in love with this game. Jen and I kind of did too. But as it was, December was a very good month. A lot of the best games of the year. So Nassau comes in at number 13. Okay. Now, let's go on to number 12, Atlantis Exodus, which I've not done a run-through for, but publisher Capstone Games, they had a run-through on their channel, so I'm just throwing that on screen. Link for it down in the show notes. This is a game where we are, leaders on the island of Atlantis. We know Atlantis is going to sink. And we are trying to save as many people as possible and rehome them to different places around. We're trying to build settlements in Africa and Mesopotamia and a third location. I don't remember where the third location is. We are trying to put workshops out there. So not only will they get out there and they'll be able to have a place to live, but they'll have a place to work and be gainfully employed. We are also trying to store our knowledge and stockpile knowledge so that we can share that with the rest of the world, so that not all of our technology is forgotten when our island sinks. So we've got a lot of story stuff we're trying to do, thematic stuff we're trying to do in this game, but how does it work? Let's see, here's a good spot right here. If you zoom in, which I think they're about to do on the board, this is a worker placement game. Before we move on, you can see here's the yellow worker, there's the red worker over there. And at the start of a round, you put your worker in the inner ring. And you take whatever resources are on that spot. Then on your next turn, say you went over here to the north thing and you picked up, hey, you got a scientist and a laborer, I think. Or maybe there was an engineer. I forget what the colors were. So I picked up a couple things and, I got some... Is that a purple book? I got some engineering knowledge, yay, which I'm going to need. Then on my next turn, because I'm in this spot, I will then move down to the middle ring. And I can go this way and get access to this or this, to either of these, or I can come down this way because you can see these orange walls. I can come down here and get access to this or this. So, my next turn, wherever I chose, my next turn I have access to 4 other things unless they're blocked by another player. And say I come down here and I get a whole bunch more purple knowledge books. Then on the third turn, because I'm here, I'm going to be able to jump down to the third ring and take this, start building a pillar of remembrance, or come over here and get some gold, or I could come this way and go down to get looks like a workshop, or I could come over here, pick up a guard along the way, and this is a workshop, and I think there's 2 different workshops down here. So it's a worker placement game where the previous turn, wherever you ended up, opened up new opportunities for you on the subsequent turns. And we've seen games like this a lot, but here's where things get fun. I think if I unpause now, at the end of a round, the island is sinking. The land is changing right underneath us. And so the board is constantly updating and adapting. And then when we start a new round, it's a whole different set of paths that we are going to walk our way down, trying to figure out, get the right denizens of Atlantis, of certain types that we need, or get the knowledge. Because before we send them off to the rest of the world, we want to train them. We don't want them to be regular laborers. We want them to be engineers. We don't want them to be just intellectuals. We want them to be philosophers or whatever it might be. And so when we collect them, and here's one of the players, you can see they've got this laborer, and then they moved away from that, so now I got to go to a different spot. Let's go zoom in on and see. Can we zoom in on somebody's board that's not quite so blown out color-wise? I don't think so. But anyway, so these rows down here represent the different places around the world where we can set up new homes for our people and workshops or agoras, and some other stuff that we can do tile laying down here. When we put our tiles out there that we've collected or paid for, we can get income and whatnot. But when we get the people, we put them on these tech trees, basically, where they can start out as a worker, but then they can work their way up to a level 2 worker and then ultimately a level 3 worker if we spend more knowledge on them. And the thing is, eventually, whoever we got, whatever we train them to be, we want to send them to these locations down here. Let's go late in the game. I'm sure you'll see a whole bunch of stuff sent. Let's see here. If they will ever zoom back in on their own things at the end of the game. Well, okay, and yeah, you can kind of see, okay, here's a bunch of people sent to North Africa on this player's board over there. And you're trying to get the right types of people into the right locations because there's objectives to get certain workshops set up, which require certain people or certain technologies developed, all kinds of things. But, as we collect the people and the resources from, this constantly updating thing, we are then trying to deploy them smartly, upgrade them, and then send them out into the world where, amongst other things, we're doing area majority stuff and all kinds of things. Long story short, it's a really good game. Very, very sharp design. A lot of fun. We are now to the point of my monthly roundup where I'm having to decide, this is right on the edge if I keep this one or not, because I would happily play this game anytime. It's fun from start to finish. There's really interesting decisions. And the rotating wheel, which might remind you of a game I covered years ago. I cannot remember the name of the game. It was the idea of we're working our way down the side of a volcano. Folks, if you can remember it, put it down in the comments to let everybody else know about it. Oh, and here's somebody you can see they built some stuff in the different areas. They've started to send their people out to them, and they're still training other people to get them into position and all of that. So that's kind of giving you an idea of midway through the game how they've started to populate that board. But the crux of it, the fun of it is this, if I could just go back to it, this constantly updating worker placement board, trying to make those tough choices. Hey, I chose that last turn. That means I was planning on going to this other thing, but now that's blocked. Where am I going to go instead? That kind of fun. This is a fun worker placement game with a really great economic engine that the worker placement is driving. It's very thematic. And it's really, really great. Publisher DLP and Capstone Games, they knocked it out of the park. Jen and I were very impressed. Every time you play, there's going to be different remembrance pillar options, powers you can unlock, different technologies we can develop depending on what type of scientists we train before we send them off to the new world, all kinds of things. Really highly recommended. Again, go check out this run through from Capstone Games if you want to see it in action. And let me know if you'd like to see me do a run through. I haven't done one yet. Oh, that's a much better view. You can actually see this. This person isn't blown out by glare. You can actually see their board as you're trying to figure out where to set up the new. But then we went away from it. Regardless, it's a great game, and it hasn't gotten very many votes from my backers on Patreon to cover it. Maybe they'll have me cover it in January. I think it's really excellent. It's got a lot of fun decisions from start to finish. That's pretty much it. It came in at number 12 of the month. Atlantis Exodus. Okay, now let's move on to number 11 of the month. Merchants of Magic, a set of Watchdale. Now, Kimberly did a run-through for this on the channel. You can follow links down in the show notes. Here she is playing it. This is an excellent roll and write. Jen and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Basically, we are, we're magic artifact makers. We make fiery elvish warhammers and stuff like that, and we're trying to sell them to customers. And there's a few things going on. At the beginning of every round, we're going to roll these dice. It's a red D6 and a purple D8 and a green D12 and a yellow D10 or something like that. You can kind of see there. But basically, of the 4 dice that are going to get rolled bingo style, everybody chooses 2 of those dice that represents us developing the skills to make certain types of items or certain adjectives that go on those items, like fiery or divine or necklace or shield or whatever it is. So we're trying to make the divine fiery shield of dwarves or something like that. Because here's the thing, along the top of any player's board, you can see these are the jobs that I could potentially, these are the orders that adventurers want. This adventurer wants a divine sword of dwarves right there. And if I've already done the sword and the dwarves, I just haven't finished divine. The thing is, I can see that card coming because prior to this turn, that card was on the player to my right or the player beyond there, depending on how many people you play with. And so at the end of a turn, anything you haven't made, there's a conveyor belt where these customers will say, oh, you're not going to make it? Well, I'm going to go to the next shop. And it just kind of goes around the table. So you only have a few turns that they'll stay at your shop waiting for you to make the thing for them. And if you don't, they'll leave. But the thing is, you probably don't have time to make the stuff by the time they make it to the shop. You need to be looking at what's coming in the future toward your shop and deciding which dice to draft so you can do the different types of items or adjectives to combine to make the thing so that when they eventually show up, look, I can make the divine shield of elves, and boom, I sold it. I made a lot of points. But, as you can see, here we are at the end of a round. Oh, well, I didn't have time to make those fiery greaves of Ents or whatever it is. And so went over, and now Jen has the chance to make that, and this won't make it back to me for a while. But in the meantime, there's a new type of shield I could make. I love conveyor belts. I absolutely adore conveyor belts. Is it my favorite board game mechanism? It might be. So anytime I see a new way to do them, and this one is a lot of fun, where the players themselves are the belts, as all these customers are just moving around trying to find their thing, and I could be planning, but will the dice let me make what I want to make? That's the question. Because then the other thing is, the drafting the dice is interesting. And it's really kind of hard to describe, quite frankly. A red 6 might let me, build one thing or another thing. But basically, strictly speaking, the stuff on the left side of my board, the actual items instead of the adjectives, they require, if I recall correctly, they require higher numbers. Or it's either vice versa. They require lower numbers, and the stuff on the right requires higher numbers. And there's thresholds for everything. And when you get the 12-sided die coming up with a 1, or it's either a 1 or a 12, that's rare, and that's when, okay, I've got to take advantage of either that 1 or the 12. I don't remember if it's high or low for the stuff on the right, but if that D12 is in its perfect spot, I got to take advantage of that now, even if it's not letting me build what I need for the customers I've got right now, but I'm building for the future, because how often is that D12 going to give me a 12? I got to grab that now, because the D12s need higher numbers and the D6s need lower numbers, or again, vice versa, something like that. And so every round of the 4 dice, you're going to pick 2 of them. And then if you've got customers in front of you that you can serve based on the stuff that you've done, you'll be able to make them. Now, of course, there's ways you can manipulate the die values and with the potions and do various other things too. But that's the crux of the game. And if you want, go check out Kimberly's excellent run through of it. This game is phenomenal, especially because, if I recall correctly, it can play up to 7 people. So it's like a really good roll and write party game. I have one problem with it that keeps it from being higher on the list. And that is the crux, the graphic design of this game actively makes it hard to learn. Because I was saying, the different cards have different thresholds, numbers they need, and those threshold numbers are down here, but then they put numbers on the dice themselves at the height of the rows, and it is incredibly hard. Everybody I played this agreed that they were constantly reading these numbers and transposing them over here, and it wasn't until halfway through the game that we could finally get our head around how this game works. And that was unfortunate. There were some, I think, epically poor graphic design choices made with this game that made it much harder to play than it should be. And now, after your first game, you'll be over it. But I am knocking the game a little bit. I love conveyor belts so much. This should rank higher. I love roll and writes too. But I'm bumping this one down a couple of notches because of the graphic design choices. There were a few other ones as well that just made this harder to play than it should have been. But once you get over those, oh my goodness, Merchants of Magic is a blast. And honestly, I think it's a game I'd be happy to own. All right, but anyway, that's number 11 of the month. Merchants of Magic. Okay, now let's go on to number 10 of the month, Unconscious Mind. Now, here's a run through I did years ago, back in 2022, of a prototype of this thing. And I finally got the final version of it, and I wanted to play it because they had made some changes, and I wanted to see, did the game hold up? But if you go back and watch my run through, I said back at the time that this game would probably make my top 10 of the year. I'm like, okay, I finally got it. I got to see, is this in my top 10 games of 2024? Answer, no, it is not, but not because of the gameplay. The worker placement game is phenomenal. And everything I said about it back in 2022, and my final thoughts still holds true. It's a worker placement game where we are contemporaries of Sigmund Freud. We have patients, and we need to analyze their dreams to help them solve their problems. And we do that through a very clever worker placement game where we have these little word balloons that represent us having conversations with Freud and other luminaries of the time as we hang out in his sitting room, which apparently was a real thing done back then. And whichever way the little tail of our word balloon points to, we get to do that action. So if I want to do that action, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 places, if they're not blocked, that I could actually activate it. But the row I choose then says, how much am I actually going to journal my conversations, which activates this whole little engine building thing we've got on our own board, which is very satisfying to do. The core game here is great. And then there's also a side game of traveling around the city that has changed a bit. I mean, a bunch of little changes, but for the most part, the game, if you watch my run through, you won't know how to play the game 100%, but you'll know how to play the game 90%, and there's just 10% changes. And they're so minor, they're hardly even worth mentioning now. But regardless, the game is great. So, and I said it was great back in 2022. I'm saying it's great now. Why is it not in my top 10 when the gameplay is a top 10 nominee? One complaint I have, folks, and it's pretty strong. The rulebook here was horrible. The rulebook actively made it hard to play this game. The rulebook committed so many modern sins of rulebook design. It's rare that I see one that has pissed me off as much as this one. Now, that's not the fault of the game, and once you get your head around it and no longer have to rely on the rulebook, you'll be fine. But I am knocking this game down at least 5 pegs because this was one of my most frustrating rulebooks I have read for the entire year of 2024. The front-loading of information, the lack of consolidated information and just spreading things all over the place, making it very, very difficult to remember or go back and look up stuff, I am unhappy with the results, and so much so that it worsened my enjoyment of the game itself. Now, I'm probably going to keep it anyway, because this is the kind of thing that over time you'll get over it, and I won't need the rulebook, but I am knocking this down. I can't in good conscience put this in my top 10 of the year, because the rulebook, I felt, was problematic. Not that there was anything wrong, not that there's anything misleading, it's just the structure and layout and composition of the rules. It's like they were designed to make this game as hard to play as possible. And so, unconscious mind, not for the gameplay, which is best of class, but still, it comes in at number 10 of the month. Okay, now, let's go on to number 9 of the month, Ray's Arcana Duo. And I've been so excited to play this, although I have not done a run through. So thanks very much to channel Renard Ludique. Links for Renard's channel down in the show notes if you'd like to go check it out. Although, warning, it is in French. But you can also just go watch my run through of the original Ray's Arcana, because this game it's pretty much 95% the same game, but it's made for 2 players only. And I got Renard there. My original problem with Ray's Arcana, which at the time I said was one of the best modern card games I've ever played, and I still stand by it, one of the most smart, brilliant designs I've ever seen from one of the best designers out there, Tom Lehman. And but my only problem with the original Ray's Arcana is there was a sizable amount of take that style cards where you could steal stuff from other players and whatnot. And not that they were hugely impactful in the game, but just their existence was enough to make me and my wife just not enjoy playing the game at all. Because, as I think I said back at the time, if we're all having dinner and I put a gun on the table, that's going to change the tenor of the dinner. Even if I never plan on firing the gun, just the fact that I put a gun on the table makes everybody ill at ease. And I don't want to make people ill at ease. And so in the original game, if I put the card equivalent, a dragon, on the table, well, Jen's always worried that I'm going to be messing with her stuff now, even if I never plan on doing it. I put that dragon out for other reasons. Never cared for it. Made me get rid of the game, even though I so respected the design. So I was so excited about Ray's Arcana Duo, which is at once an expansion. If you have Ray's Arcana, you can get Duo just to get a whole bunch of new cards and artifacts and stuff, so you can add to the game to get more replayability and variety. That's nice in and of itself. But it's also a standalone game for 2 players. And the thing is, as a 2-player game, there are no attack cards. There's not a single nasty take that card in the deck. And my phone is ringing again. All right, but I don't know who that is, but stuff's going on, folks. Hold on. I was worried it was a junk call, and it was. Shouldn't have answered. Now they know to call back because I answered. Shoot, they got me. Anyway, though, this is Raise Arcana for 2 players only, without any attacking, and it's glorious. It is so wonderful, and it is it's everything I remember really enjoying about the game. I mean, this is a game where you're only going to play 4, 5, 6 rounds, and the rounds are going to be very, very quick as we are playing cards and then using cards, comboing together to gather the resources to be able to play better cards or to get big, powerful, arcane enchantment items and whatnot, and we're just racing to score points. And I forget, I think it's 10 points. First player to score 10 points triggers the end of the game. And it's probably only going to be like 4 or 5 rounds, usually. Unless something goes horribly wrong. And I loved Raise Arcana, and I love Duo. And it's great. Now, I'm not sure, now that I've been able to enjoy the game without that extra overhead of the take that stuff that always bugged me, I'm left wondering, do I like Raise Arcana Duo, or Raise Arcana, the system, more than one of Tom Lehman's masterpieces, Jump Drive, or The City, whichever one you prefer. It's another fast-playing game that's going to be over in and out in 10 or 15 minutes, and I don't think I do. I really enjoy the cleverness of this. I do worry that with Raise Arcana Duo, there's enough in there to give you a lot of replayability, but you will eventually hit the point where there is not enough here for this long term, and I'm going to need to go out and buy some more Raise Arcana stuff to supplement this, for it to be a long-term game, right? That you're going to want to play dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times, rather than, say, a dozen times. Because really, this is an expansion package that is a gateway to the bigger game. And so the thing is, I'm eventually going to have to go, if I want to keep with this, I'm going to go back to the full game. And I don't want to go back to the full game. And I don't need to, because Jump Drive is amazing. So I'm definitely going to play this a bunch more times. This is going to be a go-to game. This is a great restaurant game. I do worry that either eventually I will move on, because I'll be desperate for some new monument cards instead of just seeing the same collection, or some new playable character cards, because there's only 4 and there's so many more out there. But I know as soon as I open the other boxes, I'll be bringing back the player versus player stuff, which, again, they're minor things. They aren't huge, but they are a big enough deal for me and Jen that why would we play that when I could play Jump Drive, where there's no attacking, as an example, from Tom Lehman. So I'm kind of on the fence about it, but folks, if you've never had a chance to try Raise Arcana and you don't mind 2-player and you're not looking for a player versus, I guarantee you will get your money out of it. You might eventually decide to, okay, well, I love this so much, I'm going to have to try bringing in some of those attack cards and then just not attack with them. Maybe, we'll see. I was kind of bummed. The thing is, Renard really likes to show himself a lot instead of the game. Alrighty, I'm going to just go back to the game. Renard, you're a handsome young man, but I'm just going to slow this way down so we can just keep the game on screen. But anyway, thank you very much, Renard, for actually having a nice looking video where you just showed yourself a lot. Sorry. I don't understand why people do that. We're here watching the video, but put a picture of yourself in the corner, Renard. Anyway, sorry. Merci, Bernard, for providing me with the video. Or Renard. What was I saying? Oh, right. I don't remember what I was saying, but I think you get the gist of it, right, folks? This is a great game. If you're looking for a 2-player, fun, puzzly, fast, 15, 20-minute game, you owe it to yourself to try it. You will get your money worth, and you'll eventually decide, man, you know what? I love this so much, I'm willing to throw some dragons on the screen. Oh, now we're seeing Renard really in slow motion. Oh, there's just no winning. All right, I'm just going to pause. And just leave it there. Or you'll then find a new home for it. It's great. Raise Arcana is one, I said it a few years ago, and I'll say it again. It is one of the best modern design card games, period. It is up there with Race for the Galaxy and with the Imperium games and the upcoming Star Trek Captain's Chair, with Elysium, and so many amazing card games. And this is one of the best. For a lot of people, this is probably the best. For a lot of people, this is a lifestyle game, and this is a great on-ramp to try it out. I highly recommend it, even if it comes in at number 9 of the month. Raise Arcana Duo. Okay, now let's move on to number 8 of the month. It's Harmonies. Maggie did a solo run through it on the channel earlier this year, and I finally got a chance to play it with Jen while we were visiting friends. And here's the thing, folks. This game is going to win the Spiel des Jahres next year. It's just going to. Unless was it already nominated this year? it's going to get nominated, and it's probably going to win, and with good reason. And you've won a while. You can check out, Maggie's run through. Whether you play solo or multiplayer, it's mostly a multiplayer solitaire little puzzler. What you're going to do on your turn is you got these trays. You're going to pick these wonderful looking little discs that represent different types of terrain: water and fields and forests and whatnot, trees. And you're going to grab a set of 3, and you're going to deploy them on your board, trying to create stacks of tiles that fulfill the requirements of different cards that you can grab that represent different, flora and fauna type things. And you're grabbing more of these as you go. You've got some you're trying to work on. You're just trying to score these things. And then, there's pretty simple rules about how you grab these things and lay them out. And the game is just lovely and charming and fast playing and sharp and fun. And I like everything about it. It is largely abstract, make no mistake. But in spite of that abstractness, if I had a copy of this, I imagine it would be a keeper. I don't quite like it as much as Dreamscape that came out a few years earlier that did a lot of the same stuff, but Dreamscape was a much heavier, more complex game. This is very much a gateway, Spiel des Jahres, nominee style game, and it's so pretty. It's very fast, and it's currently interesting. I don't know if you know about this, folks. There is a yearly geek list on Board Game Geek called the Reviewer Metalist, where this one very industrious Board Game Geek user collates the top 10s of all board game media out there. Basically, every year creates a Rotten Tomatoes for board games. And, he's only started a few weeks ago, but already Harmonies is the number 1 ranked game of the year amongst board game media folks like me. Also, not for nothing, it's the number 2 highest ranked game of the year amongst the denizens of Board Game Geek based on their votes. If you watched my top 10 preliminary of the year, I went through the top 100 games of 2024 from Board Game Geek, and I was surprised Harmonies made it all the way up to number 2. And it deserves it. It's a brilliant design. It's super replayable, just absolutely delightful, just about flawless in execution. And if I ever get my hands on a copy of it, I'll probably never let it go. But as it is, as good as it is, there's stuff even better coming, folks. December was a very good month. But Harmonies, like I said, it deserves all the praise it gets. It's absolutely brilliant. It is number 8 of the month. Excuse me. Okay. And now, let's move on to number 7 of the month, Call of Cthulhu. And now, this is interesting, folks. This is not a board game. Call of Cthulhu, in case you didn't know, is a very famous, very popular tabletop pen and paper role-playing game along the lines of a Dungeons and Dragons. But instead of us, being in a fantasy world, diving into dungeons and fighting orcs and goblins and, role-playing that we are, effectively in a Middle-earth Lord of the Rings style fantasy setting. This game is set in the Roaring 20s, and we are just regular folks. Private investigators, librarians, newspaper reporters, entertainers, performers, just regular Joes and Janes who happen to find ourselves knee-deep in eldritch horror mysteries, trying to uncover and investigate why Cthulhu and his minions are slowly driving humanity insane. And we do it in traditional role-playing form. And I got no video to show you. If I wanted to show a video of somebody playing a role-playing game, it's basically just a bunch of people sitting around a table creatively storytelling. There's a dungeon master, or I think they were called, what were they called? The knowledge keeper, the tome keeper. I forget what they're called here, but they're the person that tells the story, creates the scenarios that the players, the heroes of the story find themselves in, and they have to come up with creative ways to solve the problems. And often, if they want to do something, they have to roll dice to see if their character can succeed or not. And here's the thing, folks. I am over 55 years old, coming up on 56 now, if I recall correctly. I'm so old that I do not remember at any given time, without actually doing the math, how old I am. I think I'm 55 years old. And it wasn't until over half a century of my time on this planet that I finally, for the first time in my life, played a tabletop role-playing game. My whole life, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or Toons or any of, I've never had the opportunity. But something very interesting happened at the end of 2024. We were visiting some friends. We played some other games with them. And they told me that I've got to check out a podcast called Tiny Table. And so I did. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll listen to a podcast. And Tiny Table, by the way, there's a link for Tiny Table down in the show notes too. Tiny Table is one of many podcasts out there that basically just is a weekly or a monthly show where players get together and you get to listen to. It's kind of like a radio play of them playing a game. And the folks at Tiny Table, who are, related to my friends who were visiting. They said, "Oh, you gotta check this out." I mean, I know you don't like these kinds of things because I've listened to a lot of these, including Critical Role, and every time that Shay goes on one of these videos playing a tabletop RPG, I always try to watch them, and I can never really enjoy these things. But they said, "No, trust us, you're gonna like it." And here's the deal, folks. I did enjoy Tiny Tables. I ended up listening, because it was one of their newer ones, I listened to their Call of Cthulhu series. Or I listened to, about the first half of it. And I told them the next morning that I was enthralled by it because if I were ever to do a podcast about, or a video series about playing tabletop role-playing games, I do it like these kids do. Because, first of all, I mean, they do amazing production. They're actually theater kids. And so they come up with original music. All the different characters have their own musical themes that play in the background when they're doing stuff. For their Call of Cthulhu, they actually came up with a completely original, era appropriate song that sounds like it came from the 20s. And, it's like the song they play at the beginning of every chapter. And over time, it gets more and more insane sounding as, they descend into madness. The production quality of this is better than anything else I've ever heard, and I'm including Critical Role on that. So if you enjoy these kind of things, you gotta check it out. But what I really appreciate is their whole thing is they are trying to introduce people to a wide range. They're not just playing Dungeons and Dragons over and over and over and over again. I mean, they've done Eureka, they did Daggerheart, they've done Fiasco, they've done Kids on Bikes, they did Call of Cthulhu afterwards. They're now starting on Rocket Sky Pirates, etc. And so they play through a whole adventure, but they start with this really great rules breakdown to introduce you to the game. Then they play however many chapters in. Then they do a review of the system if you'd like to check it out yourself. It's like they're doing Rahdo run-throughs of tabletop role-playing games. And they do a phenomenal job because while they're playing and they're joking around and they're doing accents and stuff like that, although they do a very good job because, they're actual performers. They're not, but they will stop and explain how the rules work. They'll say, "Oh, well, we haven't had a fumble before, so here's the way fumbles work." And it's like, oh my God! Nobody else does that, but they do that. They remember that, they're trying to do more than just, look, we're going to see at the table. They're actually introducing us the game and the mechanisms. And sometimes they'll stop and say, "Hey, you know what? Let's stop with the adventure talk for a little bit. Let's talk strategy. My character's really good at this. We should head over here because then I can take advantage of that." I loved it. And so I told my friends, "Hey, I really like Tiny Table. Thank you for sharing with me. I didn't think I was going to like it. I've listened to a bunch of these. The only time I've ever enjoyed any of these was Dan Harmon. He had a TV show called Harmon Quest that I enjoyed. This is the second best role-playing podcast, RPG podcast you will hear outside of Dan Harmon, the creator of Community and all of that. So I highly recommend it. Anyway, so I told my friends, you were right. It was great. And hey, can we play Call of Cthulhu? Because I think I'm ready to try it. The kids inspired me to do it, and so they got out Call of Cthulhu because, hey, the kids learned it from, from their parents who we were visiting. And so Jen and I, neither of us had ever played. So back to number 7, Call of Cthulhu. Here's the deal, folks. It's great. I can now finally understand why, Lance Meister, the Undead Viking, says, "Oh yeah, board games are great, but they'll never touch role-playing games." Jen and I both had a blast. We had so much fun. We went down many wrong turns trying to do our initial investigations, lots of dead ends, but when the adventure started heating up and I found myself with a possessed dagger in one hand that was literally trying to kill me, and I was trapped in a cellar because the staircase collapsed, and meanwhile, Jen was upstairs with a friend, slowly going insane, seeing and hearing things that nobody else could see. As it turns out, we found found out later, oh yeah, the big bad was trying to possess you so that you could murder everybody else, and she just kept getting successful rolls and fighting it off because of her willpower. And then eventually I crash and I find this knife that's I'm trying to kill myself, it's possessed, and I'm trying to use strength to hold it in place, and they have to figure out how to get me out, and we had to come up with clever stuff that kind of felt like Full Throttle or an old adventure game on PC from LucasArts. We had a blast. It was so much fun. And yeah, it was really, really great. And so I just have to say thank you very much to the podcast Tiny Table, which you can listen to on all the on Apple or Spotify or whatever your podcast app of choice is. Go check it out. Check out their Call of Cthulhu one. Check out their Kids on Bike one. Check out their Fiasco one. They do a fantastic job, and they convinced me that I should finally give it a try, and I'm glad I did. It came in at number 7. At the end of the day, as much fun as it is, Jen and I still like actually having real stuff in front of us. So there are more things, but here's the success of it. We didn't finish the adventure. If we ever find our way back down there, we're going to want to go back in and finish the adventure we're starting, because we both had such a great time with number 7 of the month, Call of Cthulhu. Okay, now let's move on to number 6 of the month, Endeavor Deep Sea, a game that just missed my top 10 of the year. And I've already done a run through for it. You can go check out my final thoughts there. I talked about it in the top 10 preliminary I did as well. It's great. This is a remake of an earlier game called Endeavor, which was a 4X, expand, explore, exploit, exterminate game that was about era of colonization stuff that was brilliant design-wise, but also featured a heavy dollop of slavery and colonization and whatnot. And so the original developers have gone back and completely reimagined it as, using the same really cool worker placement, track advancement system that the original Endeavor had, but getting rid of all of the, let's subjugate, foreign lands and, profit off of their misery. They removed all of that and instead made this an adventure exploration game about saving the oceans. And I love it. It's so much more pleasant to play. The gameplay itself, forgetting the theme change, the gameplay is better. It's better than Endeavor has ever been. And my only complaint about it is, and I talked about this in my final thoughts, I kind of wished on a given turn you got to do 2 actions instead of 1, because a lot of times the turns are just a little bit too small, and I just wish they were a little bit bigger. Go watch my final thoughts. I explain it more. That's the only thing that kept it out of my top 10 of the year, and this is going to make a lot of people's top 10s of the year because it is excellent. Number 6 of the month, Endeavor Deep Sea. I've gone way too long, folks. I need to start picking up the pace. I'm at an hour and a half here. Oh my gosh. I've still got 5 more to go. Alrighty. Well, what is number 5 on the list? Oh, it's Flower Fields, which I haven't done a run through for, but Rewind Masters did, and I love the look. Oh man, that is so pretty. I should do something like this. But I'm using their video. There's a link for it down in the show notes if you want to check it out. What is the game about? This is a tile laying game where we are trying to build the best flower garden and populate it with the most bees possible. And this is a little bit later in the game. Let me go earlier. Let me go. I'm trying to find a spot very early. As you can see, it kind of uses the tile drafting of Patchwork, for lack of a better term. And, that's a really cool system. But Patchwork, traditionally, is only for 2 players. This can go up to 4 players, although it's a great 2-player game too. But anyway, on your turn, you take the next tile in the the polyomino tile, or you spend bees to skip over them instead of buttons to grab ones that are further on. And then you start trying to polyomino, tile layer your stuff out there together, trying to get big contiguous groups of the same color flower, trying to get bees on those flowers, because at the end of the game, the score is the size of a contiguous area multiplied by the number of bees on that area. So the problem is it is incredibly expensive to get those bees, both because you're often using them to skip around to get to the correct tile that you need to grab. There we are a little bit later in the game. So you can see some have been skipped because there's bees on there. Or you are using bees to buy the perfect 1x2 tiles in the center. and you can see we're kind of building up towards the end of the game there. Or you have to spend bees to put bees on the tiles. And that's the problem. The first bee that was put into this blue area, you had to give up 1 bee. Now there's 2 bees, so you had to give up 2 bees. If you want to get a 3rd bee in an area, you got to play 3 bees. You got to put a 4th bee in an area, you got to get 4 bees. And the bee economy is tight in this game. If there are bees on this central board, you can spend an entire turn just grabbing a couple of bees, which is painful, but sometimes you'll do it because you're desperate to get those bees to get those last things in place, to get those bees deployed, or to skip over the stuff to get what you want, or what have you. But I just gotta say, folks, I was really impressed by this one. I talked about another tile laying game earlier in this roundup, and while that game was brilliant, it was maybe too crunchy, pushed too far. This one is just the right level. This kind of reminds me a lot of, not of Uwe Rosenberg's Patchwork, although I could certainly see why people would draw attention to it, but to like Spring Meadow. This game is just about perfection. The rules and restrictions for how you have to cover up are really brilliant because, in the early game, you can see there are beehives and there are spider webs. We're trying to cover up the spider webs, but leave the beehives exposed. Because at the end of every round, and I believe there's either 3 or 4 rounds, I think I think it was 3 rounds. At the end of every round, we get more bees as income. We basically get the number of beehives minus the spider webs. So we're trying to cover up those spider webs, keep the beehives going. Sometimes the tiles we get have beehives on them too. And getting more bees is everything in this game. So we're trying to do that, but at the same time, if we jump over to the end, you can see we're also trying to completely fill rows and columns because that's a huge source of points. But as you can see, hey, here's somebody at the end. They ultimately, to do that, to cover all this stuff up, they covered up. Now this person, they left a couple of their beehives open. This person got rid of all of theirs, but they've created new beehives that they get income, so they can still get more income. Because again, getting those bees is everything in this game, and maintaining your supply of bees and knowing, how to say, okay, you know what, it's worth it for me to blow 3 bees to skip these 3 tiles so I can get that 4th tile because that's perfect. It fits exactly what I need to expand both my red and my blue area, and it'll let me put out bees for free as a free action right now if I play that one right now. But I got to give up 3 bees to get it. Is it worth it? There's no way I'll get this any other way, and there's nothing else that will fit that space because it's the last blue out there. So the game is full to the brim of really heart-wrenching decisions like that, but it isn't overburdened with a lot of rules. This is very simple, fast to teach and play, almost a gateway style game, a little complex with the scoring, but it is excellent. I highly recommend it. In such an amazing month, for this simple little tile layer to come in so high is, a real testament to just how phenomenal number 5 is. Flower Fields. Okay. Now, let's go on to number 4. It is the Isle of Cats Duel. Oh, baby. I am so excited to get to play this. Before 2024, Isle of Cats came out in 2018, 2019. It made my top 10 of the year. Several years later, like in 21, 20, 22, somewhere in there, Isle of Cats Draw and Write, the roll and write versions of Isle of Cats came out, and it made my top 10 of that year. And so here we are, it's a new year, 2024, and Isle of Cats Duel, a 2-player only version of Isle of Cats comes out. Does it make my top 10 of the year? Not quite. But it just misses it. I gotta say, it is brilliant. It is the same super puzzly polyomino tile laying of Isle of Cats that we've seen now in several different iterations. That never gets old. Trying to smartly grab the right crazy shaped cat tiles to fill up our boat, making big families of contiguous colored cats, covering up the rats so that we don't lose points, filling up the rooms so we don't lose points, and grabbing all these, what are they called, lesson cards, objective cards that we can score points for that say, hey, try to do this or that or build in this way or that way. This is the 3rd iteration, and it's not the best. Draw and Write is still the best, but this one is excellent. The way the draft works here is, at the beginning of a round, and I think there's 4 rounds, if I recall correctly, there is a cool little wooden Awshanks cat, I believe, and on your turn, you move that cat 2 spaces, orthogonally to different areas. And wherever you move it to, you've given yourself a choice. You could then, wherever you move it to, you're going to claim. You could claim the card or tile where you move to, or the card or tile that you skipped over, or the card or tile that you started on. And that gives you so much flexibility. I mean, most of these games, you're like, oh, I've got to move around and I just take wherever I go. Not so. I'm where I want to be. I got to decide where am I going to move this so I can get into position for something later. Or, because this is a 2-player duel game, a lot of your time is spent saying, oh, that you need that purple cat. I know how bad you need that purple cat. I need to move away from that purple cat so that it's going to cost you a lot to get over there. This game is... there's no direct confrontation, but this is more passive-aggressive, making moves to hurt your opponent than in any other version of Isle of Cats, because it is, at its heart, a duel. It's not an aggressive duel. You never steal things from anybody else, but you do often make, because there's only one other player, and because of the brilliance of this simple, elegant tile drafting system, as the board dries up and there's fewer and fewer things, it's harder and harder to get into position to get the stuff you want. You can definitely make moves that make your opponent's life miserable. And if you want to win, you will make those considerations while still always trying to get the best thing for yourself. And it's because there's only one other player, it's really obvious to see how bad somebody needs that card or that treasure tile or that yellow cat, because it's maybe the last yellow cat of the game. And if they don't get it, they'll never complete their objective or their family or whatever it might be, or it's the only thing that'll fit in that space, etc., etc. And so, while it's brilliant, and the Isle of Cats, and I'd happily play it any time, is probably my least favorite of the series because it's a duel. It's a little bit more in your face than the game has ever been before. And so I think for a lot of people, this is going to be the best iteration of Isle of Cats ever. And again, I've got to stress, it's not an aggressive. You never steal stuff. You never destroy stuff. But you do... if you want to play smart, you take your opponent and their needs into account when you're deciding where you're going to go. Because, like I said, it's not any other game like this. Oh, where I go determines what I can get. But here, you can pick up where you started or anything along the way. And that so opens up the possibilities for how to make decisions about moving around. It is a very sharp game. Jen and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm only explaining why it's not my number 1 game of the month like the previous Isle of Cats are, and it's my number 4 of the month. And it didn't make my top 10 of the year, but it still made my top 20 of the year. It's still phenomenal. And this is the Isle of Cats. You can play faster than any other version because it's even faster than Draw and Write. It's phenomenal. I love Isle of Cats. I love Isle of Cats Draw and Write. And as it happens, I also love, number 4 of the month, Isle of Cats Duel. And if you want to see it in action, folks, I'm sorry, you can see this is a members-only video. If you're a supporter of the show on Patreon or here on YouTube as a member, you could watch me and Jen playing. But in the meantime, I am sure there are going to be run-throughs of this coming soon from other channels. You'll be able to see it in action, and it's worth seeking out, folks. Isle of Cats has always been its best, and this is just a new shade of the kitty cats. All right, now let's move on to number 3 of the month, Ancient Knowledge Heritage. And I promised at the beginning of this month's roundup that I have 3 Game of the Years. One of them is Ancient Knowledge. And I've been saying, ever since my preliminary top 10 of 2023 and my follow-up top 10 of 2023, that it's been driving me crazy that I've not been able to get my hands on Ancient Knowledge because I thought it might make it into my top 10. Because this is a very simple, fast-playing civilization card-building race game. Very important. This game can drag on if all players don't remember that, hey, you could go play very slow, very conservative game and try to minimize penalties that you would suffer. But if you do, and there's somebody else around the table who is okay taking some of those penalties to play very, very fast, that other player is going to win. So this is a race game where what we do on our turn is we play a card representing ancient knowledge to one of 6 different rows or columns. Each column can have up to 2 tiles, like I got 2 here. And, you pay whatever you got to pay to play it. These cards have different powers. They have a power when you play them, or as long as they stay on the table, or maybe when they move, or whatever. They all have different powers to do different things at different times. At the end of a round, what will happen is all of your cards are going to slide 1 step to the left. And as I mentioned earlier in this roundup, folks, I love conveyor belts. Can I just please get to a point where we do the conveyor belt? I love conveyor belts so much. And this is everybody's building their own little private conveyor belt, trying to stuff it up full of tiles or full of these cards. And as much as possible, in most cases, trying to get them going to the left as fast as they can. Because it's not until they slide off your board that they go into your what's called the past, that they become scoring cards. Here's the trick though. When you put a tile on the table though, you put these little knowledge tiles on them, these little knowledge chits, and when they slide off the board, if any of that knowledge is still on them when they go into the past, that knowledge becomes lost knowledge. It gets stored over here, and I'm not pointing at anything. Sorry, folks. Right. So when a card comes out, you get this knowledge. If that card with these 4 knowledge were to slide all the way off, and I haven't archived that knowledge in some way, it'll come over here and become lost knowledge, and it's points that I lose. And that's the central tension of the game. That I want these cards to slide off my board as fast as I can. Often their best powers are once they go in. And also, once you've got cards in the past, on future turns, you can tap those cards to let you draw more cards, because you can get to a point where you run out of cards very quickly. But tapping your past cards, looking into your past is what gives you more ideas about the present, and that means you draw more cards. And so, the quicker you get those cards into the past, the better. But if you're pushing them fast, that means you're also potentially got a whole bunch of knowledge you're going to lose that's going to lose you points. And I'm just saying here, in case you ever play this game, do not fall into the trap of thinking, oh, I have to be so careful and so precious and ensure that I never suffer lost knowledge, because I don't want to lose those points. That can make the game take a long time, and you're playing it wrong, because you should embrace that. There are a lot of special powers that let you clear lost knowledge out. Lost knowledge, which is negative points, can become a valuable resource for certain things. And so you'll find yourself, oh, I wish I had some lost knowledge. I was too good, and I spent way too long making my conveyor belt go really slow when I should have been speeding things up. Anyway, though, here's the thing. This is now retroactively in my top 10 games of 2023. I think it's like my number 9 or my number 8 or something like that. But I have to add something. You'll notice, I'm not talking about ancient knowledge. I'm talking about ancient knowledge with the expansion Heritage, because I would not play this game without the Heritage expansion. The reason I never played Ancient Knowledge in the first place is because there are a dozen cards in the base game that are needlessly aggressive, nasty attack cards. Stealing stuff, destroying stuff, just doing really nasty things. Drowning people in lost knowledge, just horrible. Just completely ruins the game. It seems against the spirit. There's like 200 or like 100 plus cards, 12 of them. There's enough that these cards will come out and you'll feel that you need to use them, but they really ruin the game. And so that's why I kind of passed on the game originally, because I just knew I wasn't going to like it. And to be fair, I hate those cards. Here's the deal. The Heritage expansion introduces, I forget, something like 30 new cards. And so what you can do is, you can go, if you get Heritage, you can take the original Ancient Knowledge, find, I think it's 11 cards, remove those 11 cards. Half of them are blue cards. That's the thing. You couldn't just say, oh, I'll just take out all the attack cards, because then that would totally bust the balance of the overall game, because you'd be reducing the blue cards by a lot more. And there's a lot of cards that say, hey, you have to have an equal number of all types of cards in the past, or stuff like that. And it would just really break the balance of the game to remove all the evil cards. So you have to use them. But now what you can do is you get the Heritage expansion, and officially what you're supposed to do is just take all the cards and throw them into the deck. I don't do that. Instead, I remove, the 7 blue cards and the 3 red cards, whatever they are. I remove those cards specifically, and then I take a random collection of cards from Heritage and replace the ones that have been removed. So we're basically playing with the same number of cards as the original game, but all the bad stuff has been taken out and been replaced with really cool new powers that are so much better than those really lousy cards that were in the original game. And then that is what turns this into one of the best games of 2023. And by the way, 2023 is currently my best game for board gaming ever. So this is one of the best 10 of the year, of the best year ever. And Ancient Knowledge is that good. If, one, you never forget it's a race and be willing to accept losses to speed things along so the game doesn't take too long. And 2, you get the Heritage expansion to get rid of the garbage cards from the original game. That's what you got to do, and then it becomes one of the best Civilization games of all time. In my top 100 games of all time, in my top 10 of the best year ever, Ancient Knowledge with the Heritage expansion. So that is number 3 of the month. Highly recommended. And if you want to see me playing it, sorry, this is another one of those member-only behind the paywall videos that I do for my Patreon backers or my backers on YouTube. But there are other videos of it out there if you want to see the game in action. I believe Kimberly has covered it on Tabletop Tolson. She can check her videos out if you want to see it in action. It's so freaking good. But something even better would be number 2 of the month, Fliptown. Oh my goodness, folks. My number 2, Fliptown, is also retroactively been added into my top 10 games of 2023, which, as I just said a few minutes ago, is the best year of board gaming ever. So Fliptown is one of the 10 best games of the best year in board gaming ever. For my taste, you know it's something special. And this game is. It's from designer Steve Armini. This is his masterpiece. It is a flip and write set in the Old West, where every round 3 cards are going to come out. It's just a standard deck of 52 cards. If you buy this game, you're also getting a poker deck. You could just play any gin rummy with or anything like that. But anyway, every round, and the game takes place over, I want to say 10 rounds. I could be wrong about that, but I think it was 10 rounds. But every round, 3 cards are going to get drawn. One of those cards you're going to have to pick for the number. A second card you're going to have to pick for the suit. And you combine that number and that suit. So like in this case, I could... Oh, there it just went. By the way, this is a run-through that Kimberly did on the channel when it was crowdfunding. It's great. Go watch it. Links down in the show notes. But anyway, from this group, I could say, hey, you know what? I could have a 6 of diamonds, or I could have a 7 of hearts, or a 10 of hearts. The number and the suit determine what section of the board I'm going to activate. Whether I'm going to go digging in the mines, whether I'm going to go rob stagecoaches, whether I'm going to go hang out in town and, carouse at the bar, whether I'm going to go do some grave robbery, whether I'm going to, whatever it is I'm going to do is going to be determined by how I combine 2 of those cards. The card I didn't choose, the third card, I'm going to take, so say I did the 6 of diamonds, so I could, go to a particular building in town, because I really need to pursue that. The card I didn't choose, the 10 of diamonds, that then I mark that was the third card I got this round, because ultimately over 5 rounds, maybe it's 15 rounds, because I'm trying to, how many hands do we make? I'm trying to make a hand of 5. I'm trying to make a poker hand. And so the card I don't pick, if I'm taking that 10 of diamonds, maybe it's because I'm trying to get a full house. Maybe I already took a 10 on a previous round and I got a 6 and I'm thinking, I could pull it off. Or maybe I'm trying to get 3 of a kind, or maybe I'm trying to get a straight or whatever. It's all the standard poker building stuff. And for folks who need it, there is a reminder of how all the poker hands work right here. And the better poker hand you make at the end of a round, the more income you're going to get, the more rewards you're going to get, and that's it. Now, there's a lot of rules for how all the different sections of the board work and how you can manipulate the cards with gold and you can use money to do certain things, and how every round there's going to be a sheriff who's maybe is going to arrest you depending on how many bad stuff you think, how many outlaw things you do as opposed to upstanding citizen things. Hey, if you're more of a rancher and less of a robber, you don't have to worry about the sheriff. But if you are robbing a lot of stagecoaches or digging up, robbing graves or whatever it might be, you got to worry. You might need to set some gold aside to bribe the sheriff, stuff like that. There's so many fun little flourishes. Plus, everybody gets their own special unique power, and these special powers are done chef's kiss perfectly. It's like it's like Steve Armini, is that the designer? I'm pretty sure, or Armini, did a TED Talk of, here's all the best ways to do everything. Because this game is just about flawless, and I love it to pieces. Like I say, retroactively. And I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have from Kimberly. I thought, that looks fun. But playing it myself, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Folks, Fliptown is one of the best games of one of the best years ever. If you like flippin' rights, if you like the Old West, unless you vehemently despise the American West, or you just can't stand the idea of holding a pen in your hand while you're playing, I mean, those would be the only 2 reasons not to seek this out, because it's absolutely phenomenal. Number 2 game of the month is Fliptown. But folks, there is one more game to talk about, and it is my number 1 of the month, Shipwrights of the North Sea, Redux. And now, I've already talked about this quite a bit because this is my number 10 highest ranked game of 2024. A few days ago, I did my preliminary list for 2010, and I feel like I don't really have to spend a lot of time talking about this one because I talked about it a lot in that video. So, since I don't actually have a run through myself, I only played it in December, and I'm so glad I did. This is so much better than the original Shipwrights of the North Sea. This is not just taking the old Shipwrights of the North Sea and just giving it a new look of paint and changing some rules a little bit. It's a completely new game, and it's a brilliant card drafting, tableau building, economic engine game that I just love to pieces. I especially love the way that it's scaled for 2 players, although it's great at higher player count too, as blind draft games often are. And if you want to know more about my thoughts on it, if you haven't already, go check out my preliminary top 10. I'll put a link for that down in the show notes. In the meantime, I will also put a link for Stella and Terrence's excellent run-through of it. They are Meeple University, so you can see the game in action, because I haven't covered it myself, but I've talked about it at great length of why it is the 10th best game of 2024. And also, and now this is going to be a bit controversial, folks, this is the greatest game ever from Garp Hill Games. That's right, folks. It is better than all of the South Tigris games. It is better than all of the other North Sea games, including Raiders of the North Sea that actually won the Spiel des Jahres, or the Kenner Spiel des Jahres years ago. It is better than the West Kingdom games. This is designer Shem Phillips' masterpiece. And I talk about why in my top 10 games preliminary of the year, which there's a link for it down in the show notes, and it'll pop up on screen at the end if you want to go check it out. I think it will if I set things up right. But regardless, I've already talked about it enough, and I'm almost at 2 hours now, so I think I'm going to call it quits there. But if you want to know more, go follow the link. And oh my goodness, folks, that's it. I wonder, do I talk more now that I'm back here at home? Although it was 20 games. I mean, you want to hear details, right? I mean, I don't know. You let me know if I went too long there, folks. But December of 2024 was a great month with some of my favorite, gaming experiences. Some of my favorite experiences of my life. Again, Tiny Table did such an amazing job convincing me. I'm so glad they did to play Call of Cthulhu for the first time. I'm hooked. But folks, I am also done because I am exhausted and I'm just getting started, because after this I'm going to go lie down for a little bit and then I got to start working on my anticipated for 2025 list. It'll go up on January 1st. But I think I need a break. So I'm going to end it right there and say thanks as always for watching. There's some more stuff on screen if you want to click them and go watch some more fun stuff. And remember, links are down in the show notes for everything I talked about today. Otherwise, have a nice day, everybody. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.